welcome to Neighbor. My name is Lynn Corum. I'm your host today. And we have with us as a guest, Chris Day. Chris, thanks for joining us.
You bet.
We're so glad you could join us. And before we begin, we'd also like to thank our sponsors, Wyndham World Affairs Council and Media Room Productions, for all their support. Chris, we begin our shows by you telling us a little bit about yourself. So tell us about yourself, and I know you're native to the town, but tell us about yourself.
Sure. I was raised in Brattleboro and graduated from BUHS in 1985. Joined the Army right out of high school. Became a Korean linguist and went to Korea for a year.
I have to stop you there.
Sure.
Because I know that at the high school, when you took languages, it was not your strong suit. So to learn Korean must have been it must have just hit you right.
Yeah, so you've been talking to my old teachers, I guess.
I've been talking to your mother.
Oh, jeez.
So you can't hide anything
Nothing,
there.
all right. Yeah, no, you're correct. I took many years of French in high school. And
It didn't click.
It didn't. 4 years, in fact.
Uh-huh.
But I did put in, as I was joining the Army as a private, to be a linguist because I thought that would give me some kind of angle or way to ingratiate with the culture, I guess.
Well, that's a mature thing to do.
Yeah, so...
But the Olympics were also coming up in Korea, right?
They were in 1988. You're right.
Uh-huh.
I was there when the Olympics were going on, and I do regret not going to the Olympics.
Oh, okay.
I guess there was some tickets and some availability, but I didn't go. But yeah, I put in this Army Dream Sheet, all the languages that I wanted to, learn, and it was all European languages: Spanish, Italian, Russian, and the Army chose to have me learn Korean. So,
So you don't say no, I guess.
No, you don't. You don't. So
the and currently you're to give people background. You are a teacher at the middle school.
Oh, right,
here
yeah,
in town?
right. Yes, I am. I teach at the middle school, 7th and 8th grade, social studies.
And how many years have you been doing that?
7 years. At the
7
middle
years.
school, about 4 years social studies. Yep.
And you have a wife and a daughter you'd like to tell us about?
I do. A lovely wife, Sarah, and my daughter, Elizabeth, who's 6 years old.
6 years old.
Yep,
Wow.
yep, great age. She played basketball this year at the rec department, and last night we went skiing on the Memorial Park Hill. So.
At the bump?
Yep.
Oh, good.
It was cold, though.
I bet there weren't too many people.
No, there wasn't. There wasn't. We had to leave early, too.
Yeah, it was like 12 below this morning when we woke up.
Oh,
It
I know.
was very cold.
I know.
Now, curious as to why you came back to town. Your age group, the 20 to 40-year-old age group, is not as many of them as we need to have in Vermont. We need more young people. So what made you come back to Brattleboro to raise your family and get married and so forth?
Yeah, I went away in the Army for 4 years right out of high school, like I said, and I had this great GI Bill. And so as I was in the Army, I felt connected with Brattleboro and Vermont, even being away, having, friends that I still kept in contact with, and, just the town's very comfortable to me. So I went to University of Vermont to school there, and then after school I came down here and started working at the retreat for a little while.
At their school down there? At their alternative school?
Yep. And my degree was in political science. I hadn't have a teaching degree by then, but working with the kids at the retreat really made me see that I got a good knack for working with kids. So I went to Keene State and got my teacher's license and started working at Brattleboro.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad that you came back. That's great. And so what do you think, middle school, they say, is a hard age to deal with, or it takes, you can say it's a hard age, but it takes a special person, or a person who's, that they really click with that age group. Would you describe that as that's the way it is, or do you have any, what drew you to middle school? I guess that's the best question.
I don't know. Middle school kids are definitely a different age group, and it's a very appropriate name, middle. I mean, they're just in between elementary school and high school. And I mean, these bodies grow big. You see one boy will grow to be 6 feet in the summer between 7th and 8th grade. yet his mind is still sort of elementary school, you know, still wants to have fun, still kind of goofy. So definitely a distinct age group. Energetic, social, fun, wanting to please, very strong sense of, you know, right and wrong and justice, which is interesting to, you know, as you teach the kids. So, yep, and they love to have a good time. You're absolutely right. So, and it's fun to have fun with them.
Yeah.
I try to have a good laugh at work now and again.
Yeah. Now, one of this, you're a teacher at the middle school, but you're also a member of our National Guard here in Vermont.
Right on.
Right on. And where do you train?
In Windsor, Vermont.
Windsor?
So yeah, actually I have a drill this weekend. So tomorrow morning I'll head up to Windsor to do my training.
Is it a one-day affair? Or is it a whole weekend?
A whole weekend, 2 days, and it depends. But usually I'm able to come home on Saturday night. So it's 2 work days basically. But there's some days that the training's overnight, so or some weekends.
And what do you specialize in up there?
Right now I'm in transportation. So
Which means
a bunch of truck drivers.
truck drivers
Yep.
and tank drivers and things like that?
Yep. So we work on, you know, we work on basic soldier skills. Like tomorrow, first thing we're going to do is physical training. And we'll go for a run or do some push-ups or whatever. And then we'll do some convoy kind of training, and we'll make sure that we have good convoy protocols.
So it's more than just following each other down the road.
Right. Yes, it is.
It is. There's always more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah. I mean, you work the radios and the weapons and the battle drills. So. Yep.
And do we have good equipment at our National Guard level?
We are starting to get some great stuff. Really, it's starting to pour in now. For a while, it absolutely was not true. You're right.
Well, I have no idea if I'm right or not.
No. We were hanging on. I mean, we're just turning in a truck called a Deuce and a Half, 2.5 ton cargo truck that was used in the Korean War, you know, and that's an old vehicle that we had used in our
it'd be
motor
50
pool.
years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you learn mechanic skills too, so when these things break down, you're able to get them fixed?
Yep.
Or do you have mechanics with you?
We have mechanics that are assigned to us, yeah.
Yeah. So you go on maneuvers or convoy.
Yeah.
And did you just sort of go to a place and turn around and come back, or do you go to a place and do some exercises and come back? I mean, what's all that? How's that work?
We do. You know, we'll try to we'll work on some things like reporting. There's a specific way you report on the radio around an IED, improvised explosive device. And you'll send that report up, and then you'll have some battle drill where you react. You know, you position the vehicles in a proper way. Guys either get out of the truck or they stay in the truck. And then maybe we'll put into the scenario a casualty, and so they'll have to work some of their casualty response drills as well. So
this training is for a war type situation,
right,
as opposed to responding to a natural disaster.
right.
But you almost have to learn both of these, don't you? Because often the National Guard will be called in to a hurricane situation or an earthquake situation or a flooding situation to help out in the nation.
Right.
What do you train for any of those things up there too?
A little bit, we do. I think the biggest part of the preparing for that is thinking about where the command center is going to be, where the equipment's going to be, and how to negotiate all of that. You know, maybe do we have enough cots? Do we have enough space? Do we have enough MREs, water supply? You know, that kind of stuff. So I think it's more about nailing down the logistical and the command piece of it than actually having us train, hand out MREs or whatever.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
MREs are those meals ready to eat or
Yes.
something? Yeah. Okay. Everything's got an initial, doesn't it?
Yeah, all the acronyms all over.
All over the place.
In fact, there's more than one acronym for, like an MRE is also something else. I forget what it is, but just to confuse matters more.
Yes, and see if you really want to eat, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you? Now you also served in the National Guard over in Iraq.
Kuwait.
Okay. You went into Kuwait. What were the duties? So
We did have responsibilities in Iraq.
Okay, but the unit that you're with,
Right.
was that combined with all other units in Vermont, and you all went to Kuwait?
There was 600 of us in something called Task Force Green Mountain, and we all went to Kuwait. And it was 6 different companies, and we're stationed in different desert camps throughout Kuwait to provide security to the base, like perimeter security, and we'd run the ECPs, the entry control points. I'm going to start acronyming out here.
You can't do that.
Okay.
None of us will know what you're talking about.
All right. Well, we would run the entry control point where people would go in and out of the camp. We'd
You'd escort them?
Right, or just check to make sure that their credentials were good and inspect the vehicles or whatever was necessary so that, we felt safe that everyone coming on post was legit. We also did some quick reaction force type stuff where we would have some gun trucks ready to move and react to a scenario.
Well, you never know if you're going to be called up for reinforcements, but that's pretty
Right.
far out.
Right, and we actually did have some quick reaction force personnel in southern Iraq, so there was definitely some.
So the Vermont Guard, did anybody from the Vermont Guard ever go into, any of them were assigned into Iraq?
Yeah, we had patrols in there.
We had patrols up in the different area. Did you ever have to escort people up into Iraq, visiting important people that were coming in from like Congress or something? Did you escort any of those?
No.
No, you didn't do that.
No, we had some VIPs visit us, though. General Rainville, she was the adjutant general at the time. She came and visited us at the camp. It was nice. It's good to see her.
Yeah. And she was really quite respected amongst all the Guard, from what I've heard.
Yeah, no,
very, very well respected
very,
lady.
very down to earth.
Yeah. And what are you hearing? Do you have buddies over there in Iraq now? Any people that you know, or you hear about them? Any personal stories?
I email one guy over there right now.
Is he with the Vermont National Guard?
He is. The Guard, we don't have a lot of people deployed right now. The engineers just came back, and they were doing some IED reduction mission in northern Iraq, or northern Baghdad. They were going up and down highways checking for IEDs, and they're pretty proud of themselves. They extracted quite a few IEDs
without getting blown up.
Exactly.
That's important.
Yeah. No kidding.
No kidding.
They came back with everybody that they went with, so it was a
good.
successful mission, like ours.
Yeah. We hear a lot about the war, like in 2006, things weren't going so well over there. Could you, as a soldier, were you over there at that time? I don't know if what year you were over there.
Might have been just after.
Just after that. Yeah. Do you hear a lot of talk amongst the regular soldiers? I mean, you're an officer at this point, I believe.
Correct.
Do you hear? Are the soldiers feel free to voice ideas, like they say things like, "Are we really doing this the right way?" Do they ever? How free is that in the military?
It's okay. I mean, those conversations are fine, but I don't know. You don't really hear it put that way, though. Soldiers aren't saying, "What are we doing over there? What's up with American policy?"
Okay.
I haven't heard that as much.
They don't. So they don't say that. Okay. Every once in a while, you'll read a report. I think in the New Republic magazine, there's a report of some soldier who claimed that 2 other soldiers made fun of an Iraqi woman who had a burned face or something, and acted very inappropriately and kicked down doors and assaulted, slapped people around, and then he retracted his whole story.
Right.
When they started saying, well, where are these people that were hurt, and then this soldier retracted his story, but the magazine never did.
Oh.
They kept that story out there.
Right.
So, do soldiers feel like they're being supported by the country in general? Is there any talk about that?
Well, first, let me respond to that soldier that was doing all the bad things over there. I think that's the case of a small few soldiers. Every soldier.
This guy admitted he made it up.
Oh, okay.
He made up the whole scenario. But I think there have been a couple.
Right.
incidents.
Yeah, and Abu Ghraib is definitely an incident that the American Army's not wholly proud of. But
Yeah.
I'll say for the most part, I mean, every soldier I ever dealt with was doing a great job over there and served with pride and distinction. So I don't know.
But
I hate that those little stories are pointed out and brought out and then blown up, you know? Because I
Blown-
think there's
blown up.
probably 100 other stories of soldiers doing the right thing at the right time under difficult circumstances that aren't published, you know?
Well, I think the key word you use there is difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
It really is an extraordinary thing that we don't have anything in civilian life like it,
Right.
except maybe, I guess, some police work,
Right.
where you have to respond at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, and it's not, you don't have your leadership there to help you make those decisions that you need to make on the ground. I mean, that's one thing we really emphasize, like my weekend training this weekend, you know, I'm really trying to push down, what are some decisions you're going to make, Sergeant, as you have to deal with this scenario? And you have, you know, you have your rules of engagement, you have what's going on in the area, you know, you have your training, and you have your capabilities as soldiers. You got to add all that up and make a decision around what the right thing to do is.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It's not as easy as it sounds, is
No,
it?
and like I said before, I'm proud of most of the decisions soldiers make over there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you were telling me a bit ago about this, I think, making decisions, we can springboard into this, about the commander who was in charge of the submarine that was doing a, what would you call it, a whale, coming out like a breaching of a whale.
He talked to all of us as National Guard officers.
What was the impact of that speech?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is,
Yeah.
is it had such an impact on me, I brought it back to my classroom. I think for me it was a way to process the story a little more and just to say it one more time
Yeah.
so I remember it. But this guy has an amazing amount of character, you know. What he did was he went through the Naval Academy and became a naval submarine commander and served with distinction, and, you know, really was at the apex of his career as a commander. And he had to, they were just doing some lightweight maneuvers, keeping the crew fresh, and they had some VIPs on the submarine. And one of the maneuvers, one of the, I guess, prize maneuvers for these kind of things is a blowout, I think they call it, where they surface at 17 degrees at a rapid pace, and then the whole submarine just ends up in the air for a moment and then splashes down on the water. And I think we've seen it like on film and stuff on TV, but he did this. There's a whole series of safety checks he's supposed to do, you know, and he did them, but he didn't do them. I think one of his key things about safety is redundancy. You double check, and he didn't double check. They were in a rush. It was 1:30 in the afternoon. They wanted to get back to port. All that, you know, everything was. So anyway, he did his blowout, and just before they could react, they found out there was a Japanese fishing boat right
In the area.
In the area, yeah, closer than they had originally thought, and they sunk the boat and killed, I think, 9 people, and they were young people too, because it was a Japanese fishing school boat. So.
And that kind of thing lives with you all your life,
Yeah,
that
exactly,
mistake.
exactly. And this guy was a great speaker in that he was very, you know, emphatic and passionate about, you know, the way that this affected his life immediately and then in the long term. And so he needed to really dig deep
Yeah.
into his character to see about overcoming some of these setbacks, huge setback, you know. Amazing amount of guilt.
I've heard engineers say that it takes 3 things to go wrong for an accident to happen. Timing-wise, you didn't check this, you didn't check that. But an accident never happens with just one thing going wrong.
Right.
Have you seen that kind of there's usually like a series of things that will happen, whereas if you can pick it up and stop that, you know, adding on to that series, you can probably prevent an accident. Do you have any kind of training like that kind of stuff to really focus in on?
Yeah.
I mean, does this military training help you? Do you think that helps you assess situations better?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We always contemplate. We call it risk management in the military, and as a leader, it's really the onus is on me to do as much risk management as I can before a mission, especially a training mission. You know.
Yeah, you don't want to lose anybody in training.
No,
mission.
you don't. And you don't want any injuries or anything else. It just ruins the whole weekend. You know.
Yeah, it ruins your whole day.
Well, right, and it just puts a pallor on everything that you've gone over, and all your successes are diminished because of something like that. So yeah, we spent a lot of time contemplating that and putting in mechanisms to help make things safe. You know, so.
I've heard that the Army of today, the military, because it's all volunteer, and you went in as a volunteer. volunteered, you weren't drafted, is really a really professional unit, and really everybody's very, very happy with the quality of the Army today, Army and Navy and Air Force. Can you speak to the people that are there, the people that do volunteer to sign up? You didn't have any experience during Vietnam when people were drafted,
Right.
and really some didn't want to be there.
Well, that's what I hear. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we hear about.
Yeah.
But the attitude generally of the soldiers of the National Guard, what would you say it's like?
Yeah, it's like you said, they're people that want to be there. They enjoy serving their country. They appreciate some of the different kind of things you get to do in the military. I mean, there's
Skill building? What kinds of things? What kinds of things do
definitely
people
some
do?
experiences. I don't know, like the convoy training. When do you do that? I mean, when do you shoot a 50 cal machine gun?
Many politicians, I think from Eleanor Roosevelt, call her a politician or not, to Patrick Moynihan, to many people have thought that this country should have mandatory 2 years of service, civil service of some sort, military service. You could join the Red Cross, you could help out the United Way, you could join the military.
Right.
Anyway, 2 years of your life, between 18 and 20, preferably, probably, when you get out of high school, you serve your country.
A lot of other countries do that.
Israel does that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Switzerland does it.
Switzerland does it too?
Yeah. Korea does it.
Knowing kids as you do, as a teaching profession, what would be your attitude towards an idea of that in that way?
I think it's great. I would love to see some sort of compulsory national service.
National service.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, it doesn't necessarily need to be military. Like we were talking about earlier with the Vietnam draft, I mean, there was a lot of reluctant soldiers out there, and those are tough soldiers to lead.
Yeah.
So, to know that all my soldiers voluntarily raised their right hand and made an oath to the country is easier for me. Yes, it is.
Very comforting, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
But just knowing children
Right.
and how
Well,
they develop.
I was thinking about, I mean, I was young when I joined the Army. I was 18, and I really hadn't gotten around as much, to the rest of the country. So to actually go somewhere, live in a different part of the country was a huge experience for me. And then also to see and start to get to know other people from the other parts of the country was very eye-opening, So,
And you went to Korea too. You spent time there.
That's right, yeah.
And I've been to Iraq.
Yeah. So, in that sense, I think it's great for kids to have that experience.
It's a very broadening experience.
Exactly.
You would
Exactly.
think.
Not a lot of kids get that opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe someday we'll have the courage to do that. I have a feeling that that's a long way off.
yeah. Huh.
But I think a lot of people, especially when you're older, you realize that 2 years is not a long time, and to have an experience that you wouldn't get any other place, it might be worth it just to give it a go.
Yeah.
And ask people to do
I think
that.
to be part of something that's bigger too is a good feeling.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah. And maybe something that could be shared, right?
And do you find that the people that you work with who are in the Guard or who are in the Army have that patriotism of supporting their country, wanting to better their country, and so forth?
Yeah. Yep.
That's a big part of why they're there.
Big part. There's lots of different reasons, yeah, but that's definitely prevalent. Sure. You can count on that part.
You can count on that part. There's
Yep.
a lot of pride there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Well, that's always a different aspect of than what we see unless you are in, the military or in the Guard.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know this is a funny area too, Brattleboro, because there's a lot of anti-war rhetoric here, for sure. This is a vocal town. And sometimes I think I have struggled with that a little bit, because to see a sign that says support your troops, bring them home, not sure if that reaches out to me personally.
I think that's wanting to have things both ways.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
And I've heard this. On this note, you'll see these bumper stickers. Peace is patriotic. Well, peace is a decision a country makes if they can afford
Right.
to be at peace. And this country certainly has always been reluctant to go to war.
Right.
And I think I've always heard most soldiers are the most reluctant to go to war.
They deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. They have to deal with it. They
Yeah.
would prefer not to.
Yeah.
But I've looked up the definition of patriotic in the dictionary, and it does not say fighting your country and disagreeing with your country.
Right.
If you're patriotic, you're in favor of what your country's doing.
Right.
So you might not be in favor of the country, but don't call yourself patriotic at the same time, because
Right.
it doesn't fit the definition in the dictionary. So,
Well, I have a little bit different take
okay.
that I'll share with you, because it's okay, but I think patriotic also in a democracy is having voice, and using that voice. And when you don't use the voice, if you just put lip service to something like that, yeah, we have freedom of speech in this country, but we don't actually use it. We just go along with status quo. Then that's an issue. That's not democracy. So I think it's okay that we have those protesters and that we have that voice or that element.
I would agree there too.
Okay.
I just
All right.
wouldn't call it patriotic.
All right.
Maybe democracy at work,
Yeah.
that's fine. Democracy's at work. But, if you read the definition in the dictionary, it says a person who's patriotic is one who supports the actions of their country.
Yeah.
So if you're not supporting those actions, that's perfectly fine.
Right.
But I think you're describing yourself, you need another word
Right.
to describe yourself. Maybe this conscientious objector word is the word, how people should. So I think it's interesting how words get used
Sure.
in ways that I think maybe they don't go. But I think we are out of time.
Oh, that went quick.
That went quick.
Yeah.
That's what most people say.
Yeah, no kidding.
And we thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we thank you all for watching. And we thank our sponsors, Media Room Productions and Wyndham World Affairs Council, for supporting us in our endeavors here. And we'll see you on our next show.